I'm 80 years old. I woke up this morning with the same stiffness in my hands and the same quiet in the house. And it struck me how many things I no longer carry with me. Not because I'm wise, not because I figured life out, but because there was no room left to keep carrying them. I don't have many mornings like this left. I can feel that. My body tells me before my mind does. So I want to say this plainly, while I still can. There are things I stopped caring about too late, and I don't say that with pride. I say it with a kind of tired honesty that only comes when the clock is louder than your thoughts. Right now, I sit at a small table by the window. Same one I've had for years. The paint is chipped, the chair wobbles. Outside, people are walking to places I'll never go again. Work, appointments, arguments, plans. I watch them pass and I think about all the things that once felt urgent to me. All the things that once felt like they mattered more than anything else. Most of them didn't. I didn't know that then. I really didn't. When I was younger, I cared deeply about being taken seriously. I cared about how I looked when I walked into a room. I cared about whether my opinions landed well, whether people nodded, whether I sounded smart enough, strong enough, capable enough. I carried that concern everywhere, into my job, into my marriage, into conversations with my children. It sat between me and everyone else like an invisible wall. In my 20s and 30s, I told myself that was just how adulthood worked. You showed up, you performed, you kept it together. You didn't let anyone see you hesitate. I thought caring meant responsibility. I thought worrying was proof that I was doing my best. Back then, my days were full, not meaningful, just full. Alarm clocks, commutes, coffee gone cold, conversations that stayed on the surface because there wasn't time to dig deeper. I remember sitting at my desk one evening, long after most people had gone home. The office lights hummed, papers stacked neatly. I felt proud of that, proud that I was the one still there. I thought that's how you build something that lasts. What I didn't see was what was quietly slipping past me while I stayed late. My wife had learned to eat dinner alone without commenting on it. My children stopped asking if I had come to their school events, not out of anger, just adjustment. At the time, none of that felt like loss. It felt like sacrifice, necessary sacrifice. I cared a lot about being dependable, about being needed, about not disappointing people who didn't actually know me very well. I cared about keeping up, keeping pace, keeping appearances. I cared about arguments that didn't matter just because I wanted to be right. I cared about old slights, replaying them in my head long after everyone else had forgotten. I cared about money in a way that made me nervous, even when we had enough. Enough was never enough if it didn't feel secure. I cared about the future so much that I missed the present while it was happening. That's the part people don't warn you about. You don't feel like you're making a mistake while you're making it. You feel busy. You feel justified. The cost shows up later, quietly. It shows up when your daughter calls out of obligation instead of closeness. When conversations with your spouse turn practical, then polite, then brief. It shows up in photo albums you don't remember being part of, in jokes you don't understand because you weren't there when they started. I didn't stop caring all at once. It wasn't a decision, it was erosion. First, I stopped caring about impressing people who were never going to see me clearly anyway. That happened sometime in my 50s, when I realized I could work twice as hard and still be replaced without ceremony. I remember being called into a meeting, polite smiles, careful language. They thanked me for my years and handed me a box. Years in a box. I drove home in silence, not angry, just empty. That was the first crack. Later, I stopped caring about winning every disagreement, mostly because there was no one left who wanted to argue with me. People get tired of defending themselves against someone who always needs to be right. I wish I'd noticed that sooner. The turning point came in my late 60s. It wasn't dramatic, no hospital machines or last words, just a phone call on an ordinary afternoon. My wife didn't wake up that morning. Heart, they said, quick, merciful, words meant to soften something that can't be softened. I stood in the kitchen, staring at the kettle she'd filled the night before, water still inside, waiting. That's when a lot of things fell silent inside me. All the things I'd cared about so fiercely suddenly felt distant. Promotions, opinions, old grudges. None of them could explain the emptiness in that room. I started noticing how much of my life had been spent bracing for the future instead of inhabiting the present. How often I'd postponed conversations, affection, rest. I had assumed there would always be another chance, another weekend, another calmer season. There wasn't. Some things can't be fixed. That's a hard sentence to say out loud. I can't go back and listen better. I can't show up to moments I skipped. I can't give my children the version of me they needed when they were young. I stopped caring about being admired because admiration doesn't sit with you in the evening. It doesn't answer back. It doesn't forgive you. I stopped caring about appearing strong. Strength didn't keep me company. Vulnerability might have if I'd let it. I stopped caring about the small rules people use to measure worth, titles, labels, comparisons. None of them visit you when you're alone. What I care about now is simpler and heavier. I care about speaking honestly, even if my voice shakes. I care about saying I miss you without wrapping it in jokes or distance. I care about listening without planning my reply. I care about the few people who still sit across from me and see an old man, not a role. If you're listening to this and you're younger, I won't tell you what to do. I wouldn't have listened anyway. I'll just tell you what I wish I'd understood. Caring about everything is not the same as caring about what matters. Most of what you're worried about will fade without asking your permission. People don't stay as long as you think. Neither do moments. If something feels small enough to postpone, it might be important enough to lose. You don't have to stop striving, just don't confuse striving with living. I'm not bitter. I'm grateful for many things. A long life, children who still call, mornings like this one. But gratitude doesn't erase the quiet knowledge that I traded presence for preparation more often than I needed to. I have less time now. That's not a complaint. It's just a fact. So I sit here. I notice the light. I let memories come without fighting them. And I speak because silence has already taken enough. If this meant something to you, hold it gently. You don't need to act on it right away. Just don't assume you'll always have more time to decide. I thought I would. I was wrong.